The VRRC Civic Cup is back in action tonight here for its penultimate night of racing. 2 races here around the tight, technical, narrow, but very, very fun Croft circuit up in virtual North Yorkshire. 2 races that could mathematically decide the championship. It's very likely that it's still going to go down to the final couple of races next week at Donington Park, but we could mathematically crown a champion in the Civic Cup here tonight. Either way, certainly we're in for another entertaining night of sim racing action here on the VRRC. Andy McEwen here in the commentary box. Jack Oliphant back with us again this week. And Jack, the Croft circuit, I know you have a complicated history with the Croft circuit in your real life racing career, but I'm really intrigued to see what sort of racing we get here on the sim tonight.
No, I'm gonna take Croft from my most recent experience, which was the Fun Cup, which we covered together, yes, Andy, a couple of weeks ago, and that was very fun. So I'm all positive for Croft this week, which is a nice turnaround, I would say. But you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's the penultimate round, like you mentioned. We've already been to Brands Hatch, Thuxton, Alton Park, and then Silverstone National last week, which I'm sure was an absolute thriller. Probably more thrilling than the cricket game I had to take my dad to. It's the reason why I missed the week. Donington National, of course, next up. So 2 fantastic tracks to see off this brilliant championship as well. You're absolutely right. A couple of drivers can technically win the championship, but I think mathematically you worked out just before we went live, there's 16 that technically still can win, even if it's very, very unlikely.
Yeah, 4 races to go, plus a handful of bonus points that you get for things like fastest laps and pole positions, mean that there are 108 points still available. And as you can see, the championship leader, Scott Bugner, is on 167, so 108 points back from him. Takes you all the way down to Jordan Brennan in 16th. Jordan is not racing tonight, though, so you can already take him out of championship contention. That still leaves you, though, realistically, with 15 people could technically take the championship. Realistically, though, we're very much looking at a head-to-head here between Scott Bugner and Max Edmondson. They've been virtually inseparable all season long, but a week ago at Silverstone, Max had an absolute shocker and scored exactly half the number of points scored by Scott Bugner. 44 points scored by Bugner over the 2 races, 22 by Edmondson, and that meant that Bugner was unsurprisingly the top scorer of the week, with his JS Motorsport teammate, Joel Lask, the second highest point scorer. Incidentally, again, a bit like HFT racing, it took me far too long to realise that JS Motorsport is Joel and Scott. These 2 initials, the simplest of team names, continuing to confuse me here at the VRRC, but it was Bugner and Lask who were quite clearly the class of the field at Silverstone. Eric Axelsen, who really got his elbows out in a couple of the races last week, the 3rd highest scorer, and that helped move him up into the top half dozen or so in the points. Dave Buki was the winner of race 2, and he therefore received the Power Max Driver of the Round award. It was a very entertaining night of racing last time at Silverstone. Certainly, Jack, some of the best racing we'd seen all season long. Possibly a really crucial one in the championship, with Bugner doing so well.
Yep, indeed, and this is what they're all fighting for, of course. First prize even in the championship, an AGON 34-inch curved gaming display. Absolutely top-notch graphics on that bad boy, and fantastic refresh rate. Exactly what you want in a sim racing monitor. And you want to stick it to something. Well, if you come second, you'll be able to stick your monitor, if you have one already, to a Rig SimRace 3 setup. One of the fantastic VRRC sim rigs, proper sturdy bit of kit. Pretty much strap any kind of force feedback wheel you want to that, and it would serve you very well. If you come third, 2 tickets to the TCR UK Championship, a brilliant touring car championship that I'm sure pretty much everybody on this grid will have caught over the weekend, and probably be looking forward to Brands Hatch in a couple of weeks' time. 4th place, 2-hour online driving coaching session. That's with Dave Marshall, I believe, obviously our in-house driver coach. 5th place prize is the same as driver of the round. It's a Power Max Valeting bucket. So still lots to play for every single week as a driver of the round, who isn't necessarily someone who scores the most points or is the fastest. It's sometimes someone who just catches our attention, Andy, isn't it? Someone who entertains us and gives us something to get off our seat about.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is exactly what Dave Buki did a week ago, and that's why he was given that award after his superb Race 2 victory. Had a disaster in Race 1, but a really, really strong Race 2 for Dave Buki, and that is why we gave him the Driver of the Round award. Who will get it tonight here at Croft? Well, we'll have to wait and see. 2 races coming your way, a qualifying session imminent, but first let's familiarise ourselves with the really technically demanding Croft circuit.
So here we are at my home track, Croft, for the penultimate round of the Maximum Networks Civic Cup powered by VRRC. Turn 1, I'm going to go down to third. Some drivers might opt to try and carry this in fourth. The key for this though is to be as smooth as possible. See, on the brakes slightly earlier for turn 2 and trying to blend that throttle to eliminate as much of that bounce as we possibly get. Taking a lot of the first curb but then hardly any of the second curb, just like you do in real life. Too much of a hop from that left side can very quickly find you in the barrier on the left. Not a good place to be at all. Tower bend, quite difficult. I judge the brakes about right there, but just a little bit aggressive with the throttle input, pushing that front end on, but luckily managed still to carry some good speed going through the back S here at Croft. And what a fantastic track it is, a real driver's track and one of the favourites for me on this calendar so far. Out nice and far wide, looking for that dip to break into sunny in, down to third gear, and really trying to optimise. This is one corner, so in, sunny in and out, all in one steering input, and it means it gets super early on that throttle and get a good drive on the way out. Now into this left-hander, make sure you're as smooth as possible. You see there was steering input, very, very minimal whatsoever, just trying to keep the car smooth and keep all that momentum. And then in the last corner, you will be setting this up on a lap and going wide, but for when you're on a hot lap, nice and tight to the inside and focusing on getting that good drive out towards the line. There is a lap of Croft. Make sure you tune in on Wednesday night on VRRC's YouTube, and make sure you give this video a like and subscribe.
The Croft circuit then, which as you can see there from the hot lap, it really does have a little bit of everything. It's got the high-speed stuff out through the Jim Clark S's and Barcroft and into Sunny, but then at the start and end of the lap, these devilishly tight and technical sequences. Here you can see a great view of the final complex, and in particular the final hairpin, which for many years, and indeed may still be the case, was regarded as the tightest and slowest corner in British motor racing. And then that first section, which the cars on their first laps in qualifying are heading down towards now, through Clervaux, into Hawthorne, through the chicane. There is just, Jack, absolutely no margin for error. And although it's not the fastest circuit, although it's not the most undulating of circuits, it is a very unforgiving circuit. And I think in the context of tonight's championship battle that we're monitoring between Scott Bugner, Max Edmondson and a few others, really for Scott Bugner, this is the worst kind of circuit we could come to at this point of the championship. He cannot afford a bad night. Yet Croft is one of those circuits that almost is just lurking there at the end of the calendar, just waiting to catch you out.
Well, exactly, and it's easy to be caught at because you have to take risks around Croft, and sometimes like Silverstone, where you can fit 5 Civic Cups wide through most of the corners, and there's only 5 of them, you can pretty much get away with sort of avoiding the major incidents, or not taking the risk too much as you go through a few of the corners, but especially on the reverse grid race. But here at Croft, apart from Tower Bend and, not even Clervaux is a really clear chance, is it, at the first corner? You are taking risks to go 2 wide, 3 wide. I mean, you can see through the first chicane, not sunny in, sunny out where we currently are, but through the first chicane, you're going so narrow. You're clipping apexes left and right just by keeping the car dead straight. So going 2 wide is really very risky, and Scott Bugner's already experiencing the slide that you can get into the final complex with the rear wheels of the car here as he tries to get the power planted, get past his teammate, get into the final corner, runs very, very wide. That is not intentional. You can go as a wide entry to get a late apex to get a run on the next lap, but that was just outright missing the apex, unfortunately, from Scott Bugner. So he does go 4th, but as the flying laps continue to come in, he'll get tumbling down. A driver I noticed is not technically in those sort of 2-way battle for the championship lead, but he is a driver who is in a particular championship battle, as Scott Bugner basically jumps up and down, unfortunately. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, Andy, in practice, he was absolutely flying. He was the fastest driver we had in practice. Currently 5th place in the championship. And keep in mind, obviously, there are 5 prizes, aren't there, of course? So he's still in with a good chance of those sort of TCR tickets, fighting with Max Bird and Joel Lask to move himself up the order.
This is the great thing about having prizes down to 5th place, because otherwise you get to this part of the season and you're Elliot Dalton-Ayres. Okay, you're 5th place in the points, but you're 50 points the top. So if it was only, you know, prizes for 1st, 2nd and 3rd even, you might start to think, well, you know, what's the point in this? I'm not going to get a prize. I may as well just rest up for a couple of weeks and come back stronger for the next championship. But no, he's in 5th position. He's actually only 11 points behind Max Bird in 3rd position. And we cut to Max Bird almost as if we planned that, who is 2nd fastest in the qualifying session, 3rd in the championship. And really, that fight for 3rd is actually a little bit closer than the one for the championship victory outright. And the great thing about the VRRC is that that battle for 3rd counts for something as well. Those tickets to a round of TCR UK, which after the action that that championship displayed at Donington Park at the weekend, I'm sure there'll be people queuing up for tickets to the next round of TCR UK at Brands Hatch, and this championship will have finished before then, so whoever does finish 3rd in the series could pop along to Brands if they wish in a few weeks' time. But yeah, absolutely right. Prizes down to 5th means that you've got something to fight for, even if you're within 20 or 30 points of that top 5. It's still worth pushing on, as Max Bird is, because he goes fastest in the qualifying session.
Yep, Josh Martin jumps all the way up to 6th position as well. So some quick times coming around, sort of starting to roll themselves in, I suppose. And one driver is Eric Axelsen. I was just about to mention Eric Axelsen. He probably set that time about 2 seconds too early. But he's currently 6th in the championship. And he's another driver that really would be fighting, I suppose, for those 4th and 5th positions. The 2 hours online coaching session, which I know Eric has won before in a previous championship. Even if I can't remember what that actual championship was, I know he's won it because we've interviewed him about it before now. And obviously that 5th place prize of the Power Max Valeting kit. So, and with a strong Silverstone under his belt, I'm sure he'll be hoping for some momentum to kick forward into Croft, even if it is a very, very different circuit. A couple of drivers to keep an eye out though. Elliot Dalton-Ayres just gone purple in Sector 1 actually, as we cut to... In fact, there we go. Cut to Elliot Dalton-Ayres. Max Edmondson has gone green in Sector 1. Nicky Taylor's gone green as well. He's obviously only joined halfway through this championship. But starting to see the tyres switch on. The drivers getting to the groove, Andy. We're starting to get some low times on our hands. It
was the Mazda MX-5s I'm looking back at that Eric Axelsen finished 3rd in, just to put your mind at rest. So yeah, 3rd place in the MX-5s. But he's been a consistent sort of top 5-6 runner in the Touring Car Trophy and in the Cayman Cup last time. He's a very consistent driver, is Eric Axelsen, and once again finds himself back into that top 5 battle in the points. Dalton-Ayres, though, you made the point earlier on, very much still in contention for a good finishing position here. 5th in the championship, 4th the moment in this qualifying session, 1 place ahead of Max Edmondson, who again at the moment is set to be out qualified by Scott Bugner. Bugner 2nd fastest, Edmondson 5th. Interesting that despite Edmondson's really poor go at Silverstone, he still retains 4 kilos of handicap weight in that car compared to the 30 kilos of Scott Bugner and the 10 kilos for Elliot Dalton-Ayres, and that perhaps is what proves the difference, because Dalton-Ayres goes fastest by 1/10 of a second over Max Bird, who is 2nd fastest, Bugner 3rd, Axelsen 4th, Edmondson there in 5th, and Nicky Taylor rounding out that top 6 at the moment with half of the session still to go.
We were talking about the ballast. Well, you just talked about the ballast. You were talking about the slow hairpin as well a little bit earlier on, as we were sort of doing a little bit of a run through of the track, weren't you, Andy? And I think that hairpin is going to be one of the biggest sticking points for these high-weighted cars, because of course the more weight you've got, the harder it is to stop the car, and it also the harder it is to accelerate away from a slow corner. So really, that final corner is going to be a bit of a problem for the drivers like Max Edmondson. And I don't believe we've got many other high kilo cars out there, but Scott Bugner, Eric Axelsen, Nicky Taylor will probably have a disadvantage compared to Elliot Dalton-Ayres, Max Bird, Josh Martin and Andy Dorman and Andy Carroll, just because they won't be able to get out that final corner, which is crucial. I mean, at the Fun Cup we saw a couple of weeks ago, we saw people lunging into that final corner to get past, and also trying to get a nice little bit of a cutback out on the exit as well. So it's a crucial bit of the circuit, as every corner is, I suppose you could argue, but particularly at Croft here, to get this corner right pretty much means everything for this particular lap and your next flying lap.
yeah, in qualifying, certainly a good exit from that hairpin is important, but you're right, in the race, we will absolutely see people lunging up the inside into that hairpin, and if you can't get it stopped and turned, you're not going to be able to do that, and that's certainly not going to help your forward progress in the races, especially that reversed grid race coming up at the end of the night. There goes Nicky Taylor, making his way through Clervaux into Hawthorne Corner. Nicky, who joined the championship late. Remember, it was one of the fascinations for me to see how high up the order he could get, only competing in the final 4 weeks. Well, he's doing pretty well so far. He is 19th in the points, but actually within about 20 points or so of top dozen. So another good night here tonight for Nicky Taylor. Really see him picking up the positions in the championship, and I still maintain he could make it well into the top 10 by the end of the season, even though he didn't turn up for the first couple of weeks. So Taylor, 6th fastest at the moment, 30 kilos of handicap ballast on board that Civic, and he makes his way through the Jim Clark S's there as he comes towards the completion of yet another lap. John Jones at the moment the slowest in the session, and grassy moments like that down at Tower Corner won't help him. Again though, Jack, when we were there a few weeks ago at Croft, we saw just how easy it is to do that. It's a bumpy braking zone into Tower, and so tempting to get on that throttle a bit too early, and the grass comes up very, very quickly.
Yeah, you're absolutely desperate though, aren't you? It's one of the most important corners on the circuit. Not only is it an overtaking manoeuvre, but also because it basically dictates your lap time. If you want to get out of there, if you get on the power nice and early but controlled, you then pretty much flat out all the way through Sunny in, and then obviously through Sunny out, a bit of a heavy braking zone and get the car turned in. But that is a good sort of quarter or a third of the lap. You're pretty much flat out, and it all stems from Tower Bend. So it is really important for these drivers to nail that one. You really want to be nice and smooth on the throttle application, not too aggressive on the turn-in either, to keep the car from hopping all over the place. It's a little bit of on a knife edge, but again, it's easily one of the most important corners out there on the circuit. During the race, we won't see it as much in terms of sort of momentum, but we will see a lot of people trying to dive into it. It's one of the best overtaking opportunities, because it is a heavy braking zone, but it's also an area that comes to the end of a heavy slipstreaming zone, which you would have seen at Silverstone. Helps a lot in these Civics to get them racing wheel to wheel.
Ooh, Brad Smith there, just a little bit wide out of Tower Corner. Now, Brad was a driver who went pretty well at Silverstone, I seem to recall. Yes, second place in the second race of the night. It was interesting, actually, because at Silverstone National, arguably the easiest of the circuits we've raced at so far on which to overtake. Actually, we saw the two drivers that started on row 1 for race number 2 staying in those positions. Dave Buki was on pole, he took the win. Brad Smith was second on the grid and finished in third. And actually, even Andy Carroll, who finished third place in that second race, had only come from on the grid. So I wonder if we'll see a similar sort of situation tonight. Great to see those drivers getting their moment at the front though, and by the looks of it, Brad Smith may well be waiting for that reverse grid again for his chance to challenge for a podium finish, because he's 15th fastest in the qualifying session. Again, bobbling a bit wide there through Tower Corner didn't help his chances. Nicky Taylor out of the hairpin, then seeing relatively few changes in position here, certainly towards the pointy end of the grid as we move into these final 3 minutes of the session. Can Nicky Taylor prove me wrong? Well, it is an improved time, I think, but a 35.629 still only good enough for 6th position. So for whatever reason, Jack, most of the drivers seemingly getting the best out of their cars in the first half of the session.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you look, there might not be that many changes of positions, but all the times are pretty close. I think from 6th down to 11th, it's all covered by about a 1/10 of a second, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe a 1/10 and a half. So realistically, for a circuit that is so complex and hard to get to grips with and everything like that, and it's important to get the sort of gap in the traffic. We're seeing awfully close times, which is what, you know, sort of bodes well for the race, I suppose. It's hopefully gets everybody a little bit excited, a little bit pumped up. And if you do miss out on a couple of positions, it sort of hurts all the more, unfortunately, because you were so close to just jumping up another row or so. So it might play with people's heads as well. Hopefully, everybody keeps nice and calm. But it's, you know, hopefully, if everybody who's the YouTube chat and everybody who's watching this will be starting to get excited for what the penultimate round brings.
It's certainly going to be close, isn't it? And therefore, all the more important, as you say, to qualify well, but also to get a good start, because as close as the lap times are out there, it's not going to be that easy to make huge progress. If you're all capable of circulating the circuit at more or less the same pace, then making overtakes on people isn't always the easiest thing to do. Andy Carroll pushing hard here in 9th position. One driver quite a bit out of position, I would say, and in fact he's in the pit lane as well, so he's not going to improve with a minute and a half to go now. Hasn't got time to get back around. Is Joel Lask. In fact, he's just headed out onto the circuit. I don't think he's got enough time to get around to start a lap. Joel Lask, 11th fastest at the moment. 4th in the championship, just a single point behind Max Bird, who is 3rd. Max is 2nd fastest in the qualifying session. So Joel Lask, one of a few drivers, I think, who will be disappointed after this qualifying session. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, though, improves on his provisional pole position time by a fraction, but it puts him now just outside that 1/10 of a second margin over Max Bird. 0.109 between the top two, and then yes, a 1/4 of a tenth back to Buckner in 3rd place. Edmondson within a 1/10 of that. He's 1/2 a tenth ahead of Eric Axelson, a similar margin back to Nicky Taylor. So those top 6 in particular, very evenly matched. Any advantage that Dalton-Ayres can find here is going to be really important come the race.
Right now, you are basically seeing a potential lineup for 6th to 1st, and obviously 7th back to pretty much 11th, aren't you? Or 12th, you could even argue, for sort of 2 standout races that we're going to see. And fingers crossed that they keep it all nice and clean, because as I said, Andy, it is a little bit tight and narrow here, isn't it? And people can get a little bit desperate at Croft. It's not so easy to get past, like you mentioned, and I think it's really important to sort of almost survive this race 1. Just try and keep your points, stash your points, because God knows what's going to happen in race 2. Everything could hit the fan, basically, couldn't it? And it's not what we want to see, but that's just the nature of Croft sometimes. People, if you get a little bit desperate, you start pushing the envelope, you can find yourself very quickly going 2 abreast through a chicane where you really don't want to. The checkered flag has dropped as Elliot Dalton-Ayres has gone and put in another purple sector 2. Pretty much every other lap he's been able to improve on that sector 2, and he's easily the fastest man out there in that particular section. So you're going to have to look out for Elliot. That's where he's going to pull a lot of time out of the bag during the race. He comes across the line and it improves on sector 3, but his sector 1 wasn't good enough, so his time is just a bit down. In fact, he equaled his previous best time, I believe, on that one, so still very quick. Everybody else has taken the checkered flag, Andy. We haven't seen any improvement, just Kenny Press to finish off, but he's not on a faster time, I don't believe, so we should be able to shoot to an advert if we just hold off. I think Kenny Press is in the pit lane, so we'll go to an advert before we interview Elliot Dalton-Ayres.
Rounds 9 and 10 of the VRRC Civic Cup coming your way very shortly. Qualifying done, and the first 20-minute race is just around the corner. On pole position for that race, we will have a new pole sitter actually for this season. Only the 3rd different driver to stick it on pole position for an opening race of the night, and it is Elliot Dalton-Ayres who claims that first pole position of the season. And Elliot, well done. Really, really tight out there. Pole position by just over a 1/10 of a second doesn't sound like a huge amount, but given how evenly matched everyone is, that's actually quite a good showing. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very tight with the pack today, so it's quite important in the first race to get a really good start and get away from the pack. Hopefully they battle and then just kind of go smooth sailing from there.
I think we're definitely going to see some battling again, given how tightly bunched the field was in qualifying. Croft is not an easy place necessarily to overtake, but I'm sure you'll be watching your mirrors, assuming you get off the line well, you'll be watching your mirrors for those opening few laps. Is there anywhere in particular where you think you're really going to have to get defensive to keep hold of that race lead?
Possibly into the hairpin. I'm not that quick through there. You know, maybe some dives or lunges, should I say? But yeah.
Yeah, that is always a popular place to have a go at the inside, isn't it? First pole position, like I say, I've just noticed looking back through the results from the season so far, you're also looking for that first race victory. Certainly, you put yourself in the right position so far. Win would be important, wouldn't it? Because from a championship perspective, you're 5th in the points, only 11 points off third place Max Bird. So if you could get that race win, it would be important for more than one reason.
Yeah, kind of thinking of points now coming to the second last round, and yeah, I need to pick those points up to get back into the, well, I am in the top 5.
And third place, I'm sure, well within your reach. Of course, Max is going to be starting right with you. So do you have a particularly close eye on what Max is doing? It's important to try and start taking points out of him, isn't it?
Yeah, if we both get a good start, I'm going to try and cover him off into turn 1 and then hopefully go from there. Hopefully one of the, I think that's Scott Bugner behind me, can maybe battle him, and that allows me to get ahead. Excellent
stuff. Well, we'll wait and see how the start of the race goes. Best of luck with that, and congratulations on the first pole of the season.
Thank you.
Elliot Dalton-Ayres then will line up his number 84 HFT Racing Civic from the pole position, the only HFT Racing driver championship contention, actually, which is a bit odd, isn't it, Jack? The last championship we covered here on the VRRC, the Cayman Cup, it seemed to be dominated by HFT Racing drivers, but it's just Elliot, of the 3 HFT drivers, who seems to have wrapped his head around this Civic the best. He starts on pole position, but as I said, Max Bird, who he's kind of fighting with for third in the championship at the very least, lining up right alongside him. And then the championship contenders, Scott Bugner and Max Edmondson, together on row 2. I sense some fireworks here.
Yeah, I very much agree with you, to be honest. But just going back to that HFT storyline with Elliot compared to Kyle and Nicky, we obviously focused a lot on Kyle and Nicky last time, and which deservedly so, considering they were the top 2 in the championship. I felt a bit sorry for Elliot because we didn't mention him that much, but right now he's really in the limelight, isn't he? And to be honest, we're seeing 2 brilliant championship battles: the battle for third on the front row and the battle for first on the second row, which is a bit of an awkward way round. Joel Lask has got himself up to 6th as well, so we can't really take our attention away from him. He's currently 4th in the championship. A lovely panning shot here by Tom O'Farrell as well. He's very proud of his drone shot that he got working a couple of weeks ago, and I have to say, it is quite effective.
It gives us a brilliant view of the Croft circuit, and you can see it is not the widest of runs down into that first corner. We've seen on several occasions in the past, certainly in real-world racing, it can all go wrong long before you ever get to that first corner Clervaux, and then you've got to try and negotiate the real pinch point through the first corner into Hawthorne, back around through the chicane. So Elliot Dalton-Ayres then on pole position. He will be looking to try and lead the pack through that first corner as round number 9 of the VRRC Civic Cup is about to get underway here at Croft.